Hi, so today I'm going to go through this deck profile. I basically submitted last minute for AO. I wasn't really sure if I was going to play, so I was considering dropping. It was sort of just an idea that me and my friend were just talking about randomly on the spot, like the night before the event. And we just thought, okay, fine, let's just rush this list together out the blue and just throw it in there and see how it goes, just for a bit of fun, really. Just was pretty curious actually to see how it do. I think it was like a 3-3 before I dropped, but there was some interesting things to learn from it. Godhook Ichibiyoshi, that's the starter. It has to be this one, not the other generic V starters, because the name does matter for Crescent Moon Secure-Me, which I'll get to later. The main boss is Susanoo. This is a lot more useful now because there are ways to get your grade 3s into Soul much more easily without playing, the gimmicky Riley engine, which kind of makes you play cards which you may not necessarily want to play. So it's a bit more flexible now, this list, which I'll get to why later. There's 4 Ghost Sun Amaterasus. This is useful because when you reveal it through any skills, whether it's like Susanoo or some of the other cards we'll go through later, when it's revealed, you can basically bind top card your deck and give your Vanguard 10k to crit, so that helps with early rush. It helps with obviously the late game as well, but the early game is the best part because it helps you get your opponent to high damage, so they're in range for when you're trying to finish them off with this next card. And also this card can help you stack units, so like you can put what you need as your guard restrict, or you can try to set up triggers, or you can try to find other copies of herself or Ichikishima and bind top card your deck as well to also power up with. But yes, one of the reasons why it's also handy is because this card reveals top card and makes your opponent guard with only that card type, so whether it's a normal unit or trigger unit. So Sun Amaterasu can be used to like say stack a normal unit on top, and then you just make sure you're definitely getting a normal unit. Usually you do find normal units even if you do it blindly, but if you did want to, if you didn't think, like if you feel like you're not going to get a normal unit on top, then Amaterasu can help you kind of feel more confident in the event. This is kind of more handy in V actually because a lot of people aren't really playing around this at the moment, except Astral Poet. They technically have an inherit card in Eosanis' Dragon which could guard against it in the event of revealing normal units. But all in all, it's more of a surprise tactic, and there aren't any G Guardians either in this game, so without G Guardians there's less ways of them doing alternate guarding. A lot of the guarding happens from the hand, so that makes it even more effective in V Premium than it is in Premium itself. Then you've got Korei-Kazuchi. So Korei-Kazuchi is basically a drag checker, like you just reveal top card out of your hand. If it's a trigger, you get the trigger effects, otherwise you gain 6k power. It's a Vanguard and Rearguard skill as well, so it's very handy. You can rush on turn 2 with it as well. You can also help to stack up this guy with more triggers, just like with Susanoo and Korei-Kazuchi, so you get a bunch of crits on it. And it's like the Hamiel deck basically. It operates very similar to Gabriel with Hamiel in a sense. Usually you have to be careful with your soul, but there are ways to maintain soul in this deck, thankfully, thanks to some of the new cards we've got. We've got Ichikishima. It's similar to Amaterasu. You can give the Vanguard 10k when it's revealed. It doesn't give the crit though, but the 10k does help because it's power, and especially in the early game when you're rushing, the more power you gain, the better, because then it makes your opponent's heal guardians, the new heal guards that came out recently, kind of less effective. This card is very useful for actually combating new heal guards because it's a 90k beta as well if you reveal a normal unit. If you reveal another copy of herself or Amaterasu, it's also a bonus because then you give your Vanguard 10k. And of course 19k goes very nicely over 9ks if you're if you're low rolling, so Axe or Protect X. Otherwise, if you're high rolling, it's effective even against the Force decks. If you're against the Force clan which high rolls you and they're riding 10ks, then I suppose in this case maybe a booster might have to be considered. But yeah, most of the time you're playing around damage triggers, which is good. So really like this card. And it's also free as well, unlike cards like Rectangle Magus, so you don't have to worry about damage denial basically, which is important. So very good card, and it's costless as well. 4 copies of Theo, the new card. This is very handy. So it's a Vanguard and Rearguard skill that lets you draw. If you have a normal unit and drops them, then you have to be careful because you can just end up being forced to stack the normal unit on top, so you have to think about that. Some cases you don't want to do that, and so if you're guarding early game of using Armored Murukuma, just be mindful when you're discarding a card in the early game. Just think, okay, well, is this a card that I don't mind having forced off my deck? Or you can just alternatively just not use this early game, because this has a very good late game use as well, which is that it can it can soul charge the card DP on top if your opponent's on grade 3. So while it doesn't mandatorily force a card, a normal unit back on top of your deck, if your opponent's on grade 3, you can potentially put like a grade 3, like Susanoo Amaterasu, into your soul, because it lets you put the card in soul instead. And that's helpful because then you can trigger Susanoo's triple drive ability, which happens if you have a grade 3 in soul. So a very handy card. It's not a power gainer though, so it's not very good for aggro. It's more so good for just a setup, like whether you need defense or you need to find cards that you're not able to draw, or if you need to set up Susanoo. It's not really the push card. That's why we have Ichikishima and Korekazuchi. Then we've got one copy of Crescent Moon Tsukiyomi, which basically is a Vanguard skill beginning of your ride phase. You can check top 5 and add a card to your hand and then discard a card. Usually you'd use it to look for Half Moon, but we're not playing Half Moon in this deck, so I don't have space for that. So I've just got the one tech. But the one tech is there because we have the option to, since we're playing 4 copies of Sai, which has 2 skills, one which rides the Crescent Moon. So if I happen to ride this, I could just ride this and just like that have more soul, plus a way of searching as well in my next draw. So it's sort of like just trading a card for a card when I ride Crescent Moon and do the skill later. But otherwise, the second skill is handy because it just soul charges cards. It's not good early game, so early game is just an 8k vanilla. But if your opponent's on grade 3, you can just shove a grade 2 or less from your field into the soul. Be careful not to shove a grade 3 by accident. And what happens is that you look at the top 2 of your deck, and then you can put them on top or bottom. Again, you have to remember to use it when your opponent's on grade 3 because it's such a strong ability. Like stacking 2, it's superior to a lot of cards. A lot of times people only get to use cards that stack 1. So they clearly try to nerf it by making the opponent have to be on grade 3. And it is a neg 1 as well because you're moving to cast soul. But the deck does do a lot of... you do call a lot of cards that you don't really care about keeping in the field because, as you may have seen, there's a lot of grade 2s. You got Korekazuchi, who's there to drive check triggers. You got Ichikishima. Sometimes you might just end up finding nothing, just a trigger. And so you're like, oh, well, this is a 9k, I'll just get rid of this then. Or you might even have just some extra grade 1s you don't really care about. So there are... and also there's Theo, because Theo is like a 9k, but it's not really useful for attacking with. So there are a lot of opportunities to just soul charge cards you don't really care about with this. So it's not too bad. And it builds up soul, so you can use Susanoo and Korekazuchi more as well. And then you got 4 copies of Amuna Murakumo, which is important to the grade 3 searcher. So every grade 1 in this deck is a good ride target, basically. And you can add Susanoo to your hand if you need it, so that you have your ride. You can add Amaterasu, which can help you then give your Vanguard, which would get the 10k in crit. If you ride this though, obviously you just need to make sure you're not the starting player when you're doing Amaterasu, because otherwise you just kind of waste that 10k in crit since you can't attack with it. And you can also add the new grade 3 heals with it, so you can kind of find a more consistent way of defending. It's a bit better in this list compared to the Astral Power deck, which doesn't have grade 3 searchers. And then we've got 4 Psychic Birds, the one that doesn't draw. There's 4 Nikes, so basically 8 crits there. 2 Sentinel crits. 30k shields are quite useful, especially against Axel decks. Or actually quite a lot of decks at the moment it's quite useful against. 2 draw PGs, because you never know if you just walk into an Astral Power matchup or something. And then 4 grade 3 heals, searchable via the Amuna Murakumo. So, and it also helps with quite a few things actually. Obviously defending in the early game, because this deck we're not really trying to plus early game either. We're kind of waiting until Susanoo to do more of the plussing. So having this for defense against Dotex or something is useful. Another thing as well is that you can call it and ping yourself a damage, and since Susanoo is not on place grade 3 like say Battle Sister Fromage, this works really well with cards like Tsukiyomi or Susanoo because they're main phase act skills. So if you're on 0 damage, you can always just call that and then you just have it. I'm quite reluctant about using some premium though with the damage gaining skill. You may have seen that in my Tsukiyomi profile. The problem is when you have to ping yourself a damage with this in premium, it means you have to have a second heal, because as you may know, premium OTT is very reliant on Ichikishima. So other than that, that's pretty much it for my Oracle Think Tank profile for V premium. A lot of grade 2s, but you can suck them in with Sai. You can discard them as well. There's a lot of discard cards in this deck. It's very fun. I really liked it, so I had a lot of fun playing it, and it makes use of like all the new clan collection cards except Tsukimori. So yeah, hope you enjoyed, and take care. Stay tuned for more deck profiles. Subscribe in case you want to see more deck profiles, because I'm planning to actually do more based around these clans. And since we're at the end of the season, sort of, we've got the D format coming as well, but there's a bit more time. And I'm not even sure if I'll be playing actively, because I've got an operation anyway next week, and I don't know how long my recovery time is going to be. So I'll see like if I'm able to play or not by then. But otherwise, I'm still going to be thinking about new deck lists and things, and I'll see what I can do during that time. There is something in my mind I'm looking to work on. If I can get it done over the next few days, that'll be great. But otherwise, I'll take my time with it as well. So yeah, thanks for watching, and take care. Bye.